Welcome to Hustle and Flow with Heather Hubbard, episode 125. Hi, I'm Heather Hubbard, and I was a litigator, partner, and practice group leader at an AmLaw 200 firm. I know what it takes to rise to the top. I also know all too well the toll it can take on your personal life. So how do you shine bright without burning out? How do you embrace your ambition without selling your soul? You're listening to the Hustle and Flow podcast. Welcome back. I am your host, Heather Hubbard. Thank you so much for joining me this week. If you have not already, would you please go and leave a rating and review for the podcast? I know many of you listen every single week. And so if that's you and you've not yet left a rating or review, please push pause and go do that now. You can do it on your podcast app. The rating, that's the star system, and then the review, which is even better because it really does give other potential listeners feedback as to what they can expect in the podcast. So if you would leave a rating and review, I would really appreciate it. All right, today we are talking about competition and collaboration. Notice I said and. I've really noticed that this rhetoric has been building. I first noticed it, I think, maybe 3 years ago, this concept of people saying, collaborate, don't compete, collaboration over competition. And I saw a little bit of it a few years ago, and it kind of rubbed me the wrong way and annoyed me. But now I'm seeing it all over the place. And so finally, I thought, I'm just going to go ahead and do a podcast episode on this. Now, part of it could be that, it rubs me the wrong way because it's totally challenging my personality. So to some extent, I've never really talked about this before because I was like, maybe you're just taking this really personally and this is about you and no one else really needs to hear this message. But then the Harvard Business Review podcast, Women at Work, they did an episode on the concept. And then I was like, okay, this isn't just me feeling personally attacked. This really is a broader issue. And that means others of you may need to hear this as well, either in terms of it's okay to be competitive, or for those of you that keep pushing, you must collaborate, you cannot compete. Maybe you'll be able to see it in a little bit of a different light. So hopefully this will be an engaging and thought-provoking conversation. So if you're not familiar with the Women at Work podcast by the Harvard Business Review, it's really good. So they're currently on season 3, and episode 6 of season 3 was When Women Compete. When Women Compete. And they have a few different people on there discussing the issue. And it was really, really interesting. And I thought, okay, we're going to do this. We're going to do this on the Hustle and Flow podcast. I've had it on my calendar to do for a little bit. And yesterday, as I was going through my Instagram feed, I noticed that someone had posted, I've pulled this up in front of me, someone had posted, support, don't compete with the women in your lives. Okay, so here's the deal. These things are not mutually exclusive. And quite frankly, it perpetuates the stereotype that women have to be nurturing and always working together and really sweet and nice. And it's not that we're not those things, but that is not all we are. There is so much to us. It's like women being called bossy or aggressive when they're simply confident and assertive. We call that leaders when we see it in a man, but when we see it in a woman, we're rubbed the wrong way and we don't like it. I personally think that that is exactly what is happening when we say women should not compete or that women should collaborate over compete. We can do both. We can collaborate and we can compete. I mean, to me, it's just basic childhood sports. I mean, obviously, it's adult sports as well, but most of us don't really do that when we're adults. Partly because you have to be really, really good, or you have to have time to do it as a hobby. Anyway, but most of us have some kind of experience whether it was our own childhood or it's with our own children, nieces and nephews, the concept of going out and playing a team sport. You want to win, right? Like you want to win. If you're out there playing just to have fun, and I get that maybe nowadays that is partly what people say. If you're just out there to have fun and you're not actually trying to win, that's not really, in my mind, good for your development or society, because we're only going to grow if we are trying to do better. And part of doing better is being the best. And being our best means our personal best, right? But when you're at your personal best, it often means that you are to some extent comparing yourself to others. And I totally get why we shouldn't always compare ourselves to others. I totally get why we don't want to make our self-worth based on how we compare to others. But isn't that the whole purpose of the human experience, is to grow? If it's just to be, I don't think we would have evolved to where we are today. Wouldn't we still just be hunters and gatherers? Although even then you had to compete for your food. So this concept that we're all just going to collaborate and be, I mean, I get that it sounds gorgeous in theory, but that's not really life. And I don't know that we want that to be life. We certainly wouldn't have the technology or the conveniences of a first world life if someone out there was not trying to be their best self and compete against others in the market to come out with the newest and best thing and to really dominate, because the domination is what allows you to innovate even more. Now, of course, you can get to the point where you then have antitrust monopolies. It no longer is helpful. But this is what capitalism is all about. This is what our society is all about. I mean, part of living in America is the dream that you really can be anything. And, you know, maybe not always. There's a lot of challenges in your way, but we truly can grow up and create our own businesses. There aren't too many hurdles to starting your own business, to create things, to innovate, to challenge the status quo, to really compete. I mean, this is why we watch sports. This is why we get so into the Olympics. We want to see people doing their best, and it inspires us to be our best. That does not happen when all you are doing is collaborating. Okay? What if at the Olympics, everybody was just out there to have fun and everyone was just collaborating with all of their tips and their tricks and their notes on how they can, go down the ski trail at the fastest, pace. I'm a huge football fan, and I know some of you really hate the NFL, but I love the NFL players. And I love to watch them, so sorry. I love the NFL. I cannot imagine what my Sundays would look like if they were all out there collaborating. All the teams are collaborating. What would the Super Bowl look like? I mean, any sports, I just know that would be so boring to just watch them collaborate. We want to see them compete, because if they're both competing at their highest level, it is so much fun to watch that level of skill and to really get behind someone and support someone and root for someone. But note, that doesn't mean that they are jerks, right? We don't want jerks out there. And there are some jerks out there. So again, for those of you upset with the NFL right now, there are some jerks out there. They get really violent and maybe sometimes take that home with them, right? That can be the downside. That is the shadow to someone who is really competitive like that. They might have a lot of anger issues and need to be powerful all the time, and maybe they don't do well when they lose. We don't want that, right? We understand it as a shadow that people have to work with, but it's not what we want, right? We don't necessarily want that as a byproduct of the competition in the game. What we love to see is people joking around and having fun, being able, as soon as that game is over, and this is taught in sports at the earliest age, and you see it on the professional level as well, you're going to shake hands after the game. And no matter how mad you are at yourself, no matter how mad you are at the officiating, no matter how mad you are at anyone else, assuming that you have integrity and you're in a good moment, because we all have bad moments, we all make mistakes, you go out there and you say, good game. You shake people's hands. And maybe there was someone on the other side that you were both like competing fiercely, but you're friends. Maybe you were teammates previously on a team. And then you're going to have a conversation about, how are you doing? How are the kids? How is your wife? How is your husband? Right? You're able to set that aside and say, when I'm competing, it's for this very specific thing. But it doesn't mean that I don't like you as a person, or that I wish ill will on you as a person, or that it is, I am competing against you at all costs. So why do we make that same projection on women? Why do we say that women have to collaborate and not compete? When did competition become such a dirty word for women? I just don't get it. If we want to see other women at the top, if we want to see more women politicians, if we want to see more women running for government, if we want to see more women in government, if we want to see more women CEOs, more women general counsel, more women running $1 million and $1 billion companies, like if we want to see more women at the top, period, they have to compete. That's how they're going to get to the top. They have to, number one, want it and be able to say, that's what I want. And then they have to be really strategic, and they have to put in the really hard work, because that's what competition is. You have to put in the practice. You have to develop the skills. It requires a lot of grit and hard work and sacrifice, and not just like in the physical sense of sports, but emotional. There's a lot of mental and emotional work that goes along with putting yourself out there in a way that not only are you competing, but others are watching you do it. And you may win and you may lose, and you may make mistakes along the way, right? When you get caught up in the heat of the moment, or everybody's just scrutinizing everything, right? Like there's so much pressure when you say, I'm going to compete at that level. And then if they're competing at that level, we start to judge them, and we start to say, they're so competitive. They are so cutthroat. And, I even saw this. I did a lot of law in the entertainment industry, and I never heard anyone say anything about the men. Like no one ever talked about the male singers or the male entertainers as being competitive and cutthroat. But the women, oh my gosh, people would say, oh, she is all into herself. She is not nice. She's so demanding, and she's such a perfectionist. She wants things certain ways, and like she won't have time for you. And it's like, yeah, that's what she has to do to compete at that level. Right? And so it's like, I just don't get why we judge women that way, because we expect them to be different. We expect them to be more nurturing and kind and nice, and, I guess being able to be available at all times to anyone who wants to talk to them. And it's a double standard. And I think that we are embracing it as women and perpetuating it by claiming that there's something wrong with women who compete, and that we should always be collaborating over competing. So if you've ever listened to this podcast, you know that I am highly competitive. I share this a lot. In episode 16, I shared personality tests that I like, including some of my results, such as Gallup Strengths Finder. And my number one strength is competition. And note that they call it a strength. It is not a weakness. It is not a problem. In business, in life, it can be a good thing. In fact, it falls under the category of influence, because competitive people inspire others to be their best. It's not this concept of, if you're competitive, you're this evil person trying to cut others down or take others down. And so maybe you're thinking, well, it's on that test because that is part of the patriarchy. We think that that's a good thing in a masculine society. And I just disagree. I think that it can be great for everyone if you're looking at it the right way. So for me, and that's why I said, maybe it's just I'm taking this personally, my number one strength is competition. And what that looks like is I am always striving to be my best. I recently did a presentation and my goal walking in there was a personal best. It's like running a marathon or anything else. That's what I wanted. I wanted to outperform myself. Now, part of that means, though, as I'm outperforming myself, presumably if I'm getting better, I also want to be one of the best in the room or one of the best at the conference. There shouldn't be anything wrong with that. We don't need to be modest to say, I just hope that, if everyone else does better than me, I'm okay with that. Well, I don't know. Maybe some people are okay with that, but I'm here to grow and improve because I think it just helps us all raise our standards and, again, evolve as a society and transform and innovate. When I left my firm, it was so funny. I had a colleague. He was like, if you were just a solopreneur, who are you going to compete with? Because he knew I was really competitive. And I was like, myself and the entire world, right? Like, this is a whole new game because it's just me, myself, and I against the entire world. And for people who truly are competitive, we're just always trying to do our best and always go one above. And I think, again, it definitely can lead to the place of deriving your worthiness from that. So you have to be careful with that. But otherwise, it really just is this concept of growth. And if women are not open and willing to compete for top positions, they're probably not going to get them, right? I just don't believe that, and hopefully there'll be more, right? So right now, because it's so hard to get any of these positions at the top, maybe it looks like the pie is limited, right? And maybe there's only one slice that's designated for a woman. But the truth is, the more women we get at the top, the more women we will have. That pie is going to expand. So the concept of saying, oh, well, there are 5 of us women. I'm just making up an example here. There are 5 of us women and there is only one spot and we shouldn't compete against each other for that spot. So let's just all have a conversation around it and say, who wants to do this? Well, okay, I'll let you do this and then maybe I'll go next time. No, that is the most ridiculous thing I have ever heard. And it totally plays into the stereotype of how women are supposed to behave and act. If all 5 of you want that spot, all 5 of you need to go after that spot. You need to be competitive for yourself and try to go for it. And the Harvard Business podcast talked about this. I loved their conversation around it. You absolutely should go for it. And you can be honest that you're going for it. It would be like friends in sports and all of you saying, I want to be the captain of the team. You're all on the same team. You shouldn't have to negotiate that. You should all put your best foot forward. But when someone gets it, you support them and applaud them and appreciate them and still want it as well someday, right? That's where I think we get it wrong. We think that by competing, it means that we are maybe being deceptive, manipulative. We are trying to hurt others or to cut others down, that we're trying to prevent others from getting to the top with us or having other women at the top with us. That's not competition. Right? That's this concept of scarcity and our insecurities around having other powerful women around us. But that is not competition. If we are competing and all wanting the same thing, while at the same time still shaking each other's hands, still having dinner together, still truly loving and supporting each other, that is collaborative. There is nothing wrong. We can have both. And in fact, even though I am a highly competitive person and will tell you that, I'm also an extremely collaborative person. I help so many other women in this space trying to be a coach or a consultant or a speaker or make a difference. I help many. I can't help all. And so many of you reach out and I can't always help you, but I definitely do help others. And we work on programs together and we talk about, well, how can I bring you in and how, can you bring me in? And how do we support each other in that way? That's collaborative. I can be competitive and collaborative at the exact same time, and so can you. Please, please, please do not play small. Do not pull back on your ambition or vocalizing what you want and your ambition for fear that it will look like you are being cutthroat and competitive, for fear that it will look like you're not supporting your friends or supporting other women. That's where you have to know in your own heart that that is not what's going on. If it is, you might want to check in with that, right? I don't think anyone would listen to my podcast who's like that, but it's okay to be competitive and to point your finger at what you want and say, I'm going for that. And when the person next to you says, I'm going for that too, and you go, all right, it's on. You're both going to push each other to be better when you do that. It doesn't mean that you can't be nice and friends and collaborative along the way and afterwards. Because if you both point at it, one of you is going to get it first. But my guess is the other can help pull the other one up as well. If we are competitive together, including against each other, that's how we're going to get to the top. And if we stay committed to helping women and collaborating, that's when we can help pull others up around us. In my mind, we should move from the lexicon of competition versus collaboration and honestly move to competition and support. I don't even think it's collaboration. I just think it's support. It's women supporting women. If you want the concept of collaboration, I really don't think it's about teamwork. I really think it's more about support. So how can you be competitive and support other women? Well, if you're a GC or a CEO where that's what you're striving for, you're competing in that regard. But why don't you support women by mentoring them? I guarantee you're already doing that. And support women by hiring outside counsel who are women, right? So let's say the company has always used a certain firm or a male attorney. That's where you can get really brave and courageous and be competitive on behalf of your sisters by saying, you know what, I think she can do it just as well or better. We're going to give her a shot. That's what support looks like. Support also looks like panels. So if a panel is being put together, or maybe you are the sponsor or the chair of that CLE or whatever committee, are you looking around and saying, who are the women in this community that I really think could use some spotlight, some support? Maybe you never see them on CLEs, but you've seen them in court, or you've had them on the other side of a deal and you really respect them and you think that they're great. Lift them up, support them, make sure that they are invited and have a seat at the table. So often the exact same people are on every single panel. Look around you, look around your community. Who are the women that you want to start supporting? Take an active role in making sure that those panels are diverse. And part of what that means is if you're a white woman and you're invited to be on a panel, and let's say you're on panels all the time, or you're invited to serve on a committee and you serve on committees all the time, and you see that there are already other women as well, but you're all white, I want you to say, we need more diversity on this panel. Where are our women of color? And I would like to give up my seat to make sure that a woman of color is on the panel. And if any of the rest of you feel the same way, let's do that. And then be really proactive about saying, who are the women of color in our community that deserve this seat? And if you don't know any of them, that's on you, not them. That is on you. You absolutely should know who they are. And so go find out, go build relationships, and just reach out and ask them if they want that opportunity. But this is how we support each other. This is what true collaboration means. It is being proactive on behalf of one another to look at these opportunities. And if you have women who are throwing their hats in the political arena, oh my gosh, right? Whether they are running for judge, whether they are running for councilwoman or, the Board of Education, whatever it looks like, support them. Give them your dollars. Give them your vote, right? So even if you're not out canvassing for them or making phone calls for them, there are still ways for you to support them. So just saying, I support women and I support women's rights and I support women's causes without really putting your money behind it, without really being proactive and making sure that your actions truly are in alignment with what you're saying, that's what true collaboration looks like. That's what true support looks like. And you can 100% be competitive with your own life and career and getting what you want and being supportive and helping other women rise. Those are not mutually exclusive. And I, for one, am sick and tired of this whole competition versus collaboration and competition being a bad word. Women can be competitive. It is great for women to be competitive. More women will get to the top when we embrace and support their competitive nature. So if maybe you're one of the people out there who have been saying, things around like competition versus collaboration, collaborate over compete, anything like that, I would love it if you would at least just consider whether maybe there's a better way to say what you're really wanting to say, which is let's all lift each other up and not, cut each other down. And that's a very different thing than competing. I want each and every one of you to be competing for what you want in your life and your career. Please do not settle because you're worried that you might be perceived poorly by others, because that's not how a woman is supposed to behave. It's absolutely how women are supposed to behave, just as much as it is for men. It's not a dirty word. Go back to sports. Look at what it means to be competitive. This is what allows us to rise. It's what allows us to innovate. It's what allows us to grow. So go out there, compete, and support each other. Thank you so much for listening to me while I'm on my soapbox today. I felt like I was preaching. Sometimes I get that way. Hopefully I wasn't being too preachy, but I really want us to get around this concept and let's really start supporting each other and not making words like ambition and competition be dirty words. They are not. Let's embrace them. Have a great week and talk to you soon. For show notes, downloads, and other free resources, and to keep the conversation going, head on over to hustleandflowpodcast.com. See you there.